Good evening, good morning, good night, wherever you watch this transmission. It is I, Mike Martins, bringing you another housing discussion story here from Auckland, New Zealand. And Jacinda Ardern says, cooling Auckland housing market is nothing like tanking home prices in Sydney. So they're pointing fingers at each other and saying, well, we're not as bad as Sydney. Don't you worry about us. We good here in New Zealand. So let's find out what she had to say here. She was on, what is this thing? News Now, #1 News Now, and there's nothing really here. So let's see what she's got to say here.
Is upbeat, but if the surveys are to be believed, business confidence remains down in the dumps. So joining us to discuss is Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Good morning, Prime Minister.
Good morning.
Did you welcome Adrian Orr's statements about the economy's prospects?
Yeah, you didn't welcome Stefan Molyneux.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly saying that we can look forward to some stimulus in the economy off the back of government policy like the families package, which came in on the 1st of July.
Stimulus, guys, remember that word. That's going to come and haunt your futures and your kids and grandkids.
He's also pointed to export-led growth, which should see good solid growth into 2019. His overall message, though, to business was now's the time to invest. They're giving certainty around the future of low
The girl's like,
interest rates, and so what I hope to see off the back of that is that we see that steady investment by business and making the most of that low cost of capital.
What do you make of Simon Bridges' comments that Adrian Orr was pandering to Labor politically?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously an important role for the Governor of the Reserve Bank to be absolutely impartial in the role that they do. And I don't think, we would want to see other parts of the political spectrum trying to imply that he's not. I think in the short time he's been in the job, he's done a great job of making the Reserve Bank more accessible, his role more accessible, and he's governed by legislation. So, yeah, I'd really call into question what I think the Leader of the Opposition has said there.
Got a question for you guys. Comment below. Do you guys think negative interest rates is worse than quantitative easing? Quantitative easing is like stealing from your future and your kids' future and your grandkids' future. Do you think it's worse than negative interest? In negative interest rates, they just take money out of your bank, so you pay for things up front. Basically, you pay for the country's debt up front. Where quantitative easing and stimulus, you actually pay for it a lot more in the long run.
The BNZ economist has described his monetary policy statement as stridently dovish. Do you think he's afraid to make any big moves?
No. Look, he, as I say, is governed by legislation. There's a requirement on him to manage, of course, inflation. He's gone out and given some certainty with his forecast saying, look out to 2020, here's an expectation that things will remain steady. That's slightly longer run.
So we don't want home prices to stay steady in New Zealand because the Kiwi proper is so out of reach of buying anything, right? So we want prices to go down and not prop up this Mickey Mouse market.
Than what he had made statements around in the past. But I think that should give an indication to business that now is the time to invest and that the outlook is looking solid.
I don't know about that, guys. Like with the people, not enough people securing financing, with the capital outflows of China to zero, foreign investing not allowed in New Zealand, lots of red tape.
You just mentioned certainty there, which is really important for businesses, to have certainty, to know what's going on so that they can plan. A lot of businesses are saying that they haven't got this with your government. What are you going to...
Remember, consumer confidence is the lowest it's been since 1975 throughout the English-speaking world. You got graveyards of cars piling up of brand new cars, huge graveyards of new cars that are not moving. And yeah, it's not looking good. It's not looking good in the long run for lots of delinquencies on credit cards and people living off credit to eat.
What are you going to do about that?
Yeah, and look, and on the one hand, I've pointed to the indicators that demonstrate that even when you're looking to the future, because, for instance, we're running a surplus, because we're keeping debt down, because the projections around unemployment look to stay low, around 4.5%, and actually to move to even a lower point than that, and because we have, for instance, the indications from the Governor of the Reserve Bank, those are indicators indicators that should give that level of certainty to business in the future. But look, if the challenge is issued to us is what are we going to do as a government to make sure that we're also responding to the challenges business are facing, the skills gap that they have, the issues we have around productivity, I absolutely accept that challenge. I'm making a speech later on this month laying out our agenda in those areas to really respond to those concerns. But overall, I'd say we couldn't actually stick with the status quo. I don't think New Zealand wants an economy that's built solely on housing speculation.
Yeah, well, that's what the economy has been built off the last couple of years. So the last 8 or 9 or 10 years, it's been built off housing speculation. Australia is far off worse.
And migration. Those are not good, solid foundations. Our future lies in being innovative, being more productive, making sure that we add value to our exports and have export-led growth. That's a solid, resilient economy, and that's what we as a government are working towards.
OK, let's talk about adding value to exports then. You had an announcement about the Provincial Growth Fund and about how many trees you'd like to plant. Yes. Have you got any plans to process those trees on our shores, or are you going to send them offshore as raw logs?
Well, look, actually, that's been one of our major frustrations. We talked about that a lot during the election. You know, if you live on the East Coast and you're constantly seeing those logs being shipped off only to be imported back down the track, particularly when you've got a housing crisis, that's a source of frustration. So that is something that we have been working on. And
yeah, New Zealand does what Canada does. It exports all its stuff. For example, we export to the US and buy it back at a loss. We do that a lot in Canada. We export our crude and buy it back at a loss. So it's horrible when we have the manpower and the facility and the land to do what we got to do in our own country.
We've talked about the potential for processing plants in Gisborne, for instance. What we announced yesterday, though, was making sure that we continue to have enough planting in the first place. We've set aside funding for partnerships, both with local government, with landowners, with iwi, with anyone who holds land that could be made more productive through tree planting. And we want a mix of natives and exotics. Natives, of course, because in the long term, this can also contribute to better environmental outcomes. We can reduce erosion, we can make sure that we're reducing our carbon emissions. So there's so many win-wins with forestry, which is why we're investing so heavily in it.
Let's talk about the housing market. Are you afraid that New Zealand could follow Sydney's path and have the housing tank a little? It's 5% down in Sydney?
No.
5% down in Sydney? Let me just clear my throat here.
It's certainly not what it looks like we're experiencing now here in New Zealand. Look, if you look to Auckland, you know, there is a cooling there. That doesn't mean that properties are losing their value. That it just means that essentially they're not escalating at the rate that we've seen in the past. And I think even homeowners and particularly first home buyers acknowledge that that was something that needed to change. Our job, I think, is to make sure that we keep producing, that we keep increasing supply. First home buyers are traditionally looking for a particular kind of house. They don't need large parcels of land. They don't need large homes, but those affordable homes aren't being built. They make up a very small percentage of our new builds, which is why we've
create better paying jobs. Then this way people don't have to be stuck in affordable housing. How's about that? How the people used to live in the 80s and 90s, where they pick and choose the house they want because they can afford it and they can finance it because their job is paying them enough. What are jobs paying there?
We've developed Kiwi Build. It's about bringing in supply to the end of the market.
Yeah, Phil Tyford, I think, introduced that Kiwi Build program, and I think they're falling behind. But that's okay. I mean, I'm not trying here to bash them on that or anything.
We just don't have it. That allows us to retain the value of our existing homes, whilst we also stop seeing that massive escalation in price.
If growth in housing did go into the negative territory, would you consider easing the loan-to-value ratio?
Look, that's a decision ultimately for the Reserve Bank, but I think it's really interesting to see that yesterday Kiwi Bank announced that they would, for Kiwi build homes, only be seeking a deposit of 10%, and that's of course because these are new builds, so they're adding to supply rather than putting pressure on the housing market, which is what the Reserve Bank was trying to address. So an initiative like that really, I think, demonstrates
7% down interest rate for 10 years. Watch out, guys, I'm telling you. interest only. Watch out. Don't follow. These are traps. Sometimes, you know, you got to make sure you look out for yourself and your family.
That we have tools to make housing more accessible, and we are absolutely using them as a government.
Thank you very much for your time this morning, Jacinda Ardern, our Prime Minister.
That's Jacinda Ardern. Anyways, I wanted to throw this out there for you guys and kind of over-commentate on what I think, on my opinion. If you're in New Zealand, I need you to go ahead and leave your opinion below in the comment section. And yeah, increasing supply isn't the problem. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And if you want to support the transmission, please go ahead and share my video or this video or any video you like of mine, and help me support the growing of this channel and this transmission. It means a lot to me. Thank you very much, and a big hug to everyone out there watching in the English-speaking world.